Well, here we are. The grand final of the DFS Down Under show with Smatho and Hef. It's the $200,000 Demons versus Bulldogs. 27 weeks of AFLs come down to the one game, $200,000 prize pool. Hef, thanks for joining me on the stream today. How are you, bud?
Jeez, it's been a long 2 weeks, hasn't it, Smatho?
Oh,
Just waiting for this to come around. Yeah, dinging, but I'm a bit reluctant to mention the teams because I had Port Adelaide as being certainties to make the final, but it's really grown on me this grand final. I reckon it's going to be an absolute ripper. So pumped. Pumped is an understatement for this one, Smatho.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, I'm pumped. You're pumped. I'm sure of our viewers and replay viewers on the stream are pumped as well. So like to give a bit of a shout out to all of our viewers throughout the season who've been sticking through us week on week. And if you're a new viewer tonight thinking, who the hell are these two? I'm Smatho. There's Hef. He's over there. We've been grinding Draftstars for a few years now. And we are looking forward to this $200,000 prize pool that Draftstars have put up with a $20,000 first prize. Now, Hef, I did mention last week that I will have a special guest for our grand final edition. And
did you get one?
Well,
someone put their hand up, did they?
Well, I would say, look, yeah, because he's sitting backstage. I don't want to say it's easy way about a right reply, but I do have a special guest. Let's get him on straight on the stream here. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you a guy that I've when I first started playing day fantasy sports, there was a particular article here in Australia that you had to read every week before you do every slate for Draftstars Fantasy. He was known as the Value Hunter. Now, do you know who the Value Hunter is, Hef?
Thought you were going to be talking about my articles then, Smatho, but yes, there was another competing complimentary article, the Value Hunter. I do remember it, Smatho.
So when I put the call out saying, would the Value Hunter like to get on the grand final edition because he's a mad Demons fan, he has put the hand up. So let me introduce you to the Value Hunter from Fantasy Insider, our guru Demons man. Let's bring him in. Rudy, here he is. Good evening, mate. How are you, mate?
There he is.
Yeah, g'day, boys. How are you? Good to see you both.
Rudy, where you been? Everyone's been looking for you.
I've been enjoying my retirement from the DFS content world. Last year's Footy Fest absolutely killed me, and so I've been enjoying just kicking back and watching you guys do your stuff. Very impressed with the way you've been carrying the torch, and now you guys have definitely taken over as number one DFS content providers in the country. So well done to you both.
Beautiful. That'll keep you.
It's great to have comments. It's great to have you on the stream because obviously we do know you as a mad Demons fan. So to have you on the show, pumping up your boys. There's Trent saying, let's go. Look, Mark say we're looking good, so which is fantastic. Well, how's it feel having your Melbourne Demons in the grand final, first of all?
Yeah, look, mate, it's great. It's really amazing. I'm an old guy myself, so I've seen it all. I've been through all the trauma of recent years. 7 years old at VFL Park when Jimmy Steins ran over the mark, and I can remember going to the grand final the next year, and after we got smashed by Hawthorn, I said to Dad, can I take my jumper off on the train because I don't want people to know that I'm a Melbourne supporter. Same thing again in 2000, and then tanking scandal, 168 in Geelong, and not even getting up for the game where Jimmy died that week. And it's been traumatic, Smatho, as a Melbourne supporter, but there is something different about the boys this year, that is for sure.
And it's also different this year because they're not at the MCG. It's been quite extraordinary in terms of how they've gone about it at neutral grounds for like probably a half a year. I think they've been on the road itself, but they seem to have got a great run leading up to the grand final, though.
Yeah, really. I've been chatting to a few mates, also obviously Mankey Melbourne supporters. I love the way from the day we had to go straight to Perth, right? They took the whole squad over. They could have easily left people like Majak and Carl Chandler and blokes that people don't even know about. They could have left them behind. They brought them all over to Perth into the hub, and especially for the first little quarantine bit, it really did look like they had built a really great team culture. I think they've been watching a few Doc Rivers documentaries and, the whole concept of Ubuntu. I don't know if you've been watching Netflix, playing for each other like the Celtics. It really does look like the team is playing for each other, which I know is something that Clayton Oliver and Petrarca in years past have been criticised for, playing for themselves. But look, we haven't won it yet. The Dogs are a formidable opponent, and they have definitely momentum on their side. I think they benefit from having the 2 weeks to prepare for the game. I know that we get, an extra week to put into Stephen May's recovery, but, a one-legged Steph Martin gets an extra week, and Waitman and Keith obviously come back into the team. So it should be an absolute cracker of a game. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, enough of this sentimental stuff. We really want to know about your Draftstars action this year. Now, how's your Draftstars experience been this year? And obviously, overall, how'd you find the experience with AFL this year without needing to provide written content for the masses?
Mate, it's been bloody marvelous. I've got to tell you. Just being able to casually look at teams. I won't lie that I got this kind of feeling of anxiety on Tuesday afternoons. If contests hadn't been announced yet, I'm like, I've got to start writing. But no, it was great to sit back a bit. You guys know me. I'm not a huge spender in the DFS world, so I've just been playing the minis and micros. But it's been cool to see Draftstars really cement their place in the DFS community, putting up some massive prizes. Shame that we didn't get a real live final. That's probably for me in Draftstars the biggest disappointment of the year. They're just such great events, getting to meet people and have a chat and a bit of banter. I mean, that's what it's all about, really, especially for those of us who don't spend, thousands of dollars each year, just having a chat and meeting people. But, great to see another huge kitty up for grabs for grand final day. But for me, my year's just been, playing my Rudy teams. If you don't know what a Rudy team is, I don't usually it's an even spread of salary allocation, which for a game like this one, guys, it's going to be interesting to see how people approach this.
It is going to be interesting because there are some sharp value plays that you probably want to tell the viewers very shortly. But one thing that you did mention was about the live final. Now, obviously, I'll put it to you, Hef. Have you seen the archival footage during the week of the championship belt and the old check being delivered to Tommy's Guns?
There's a fair bit of carry on in that video, wasn't there, Smatho? But yes, I did see
Smatho,
that.
did you just refer to yourself then, mate? I can't let that one slide. Hey, Hef, did you happen to see me today?
This is just a scaring of what we get through in the green room before the show, Rudy. Yes, it was. I don't think you're going to get signed by any networks in the near future, Smatho, but it was enjoyable. And I think that's one thing about DFS. No one takes themselves too seriously in this community, do they?
No, they don't. And I want to do a shout out to Tommy, who obviously he opened up his home all the way in Fremantle to bring him in and have a chat about his $100,000 win and things like that. So I just want to say, if you haven't seen the video, get on the Twitter's Draftstars handle or their Facebook. It's up there. Check it out. Yes, there is some carry on in it, but no, I had a great time. I want to thank, seriously want to thank Draftstars for giving the opportunity to go see Tommy, obviously with the situation around Australia and things like that. So shout out to Draftstars and shout out to everyone in the community for making that happen. All right, well, let's get into this massive game. $200,000 prize pool, $20,000 to first place. Now, I've got my own little slide here, which I have to do because of Draftstars wanting me to make sure that I'm plugging the contest. So there it is. Oh, little balance fade. So $200,000 prize pool. Go. Let's talk about the teams first of all. No changes for the Demons. Obviously, Jordan is going to probably likely do the medical sub. So we'll lock that in. For the Doggies, Keith and Waitman are back in, which will pretty much foreshadow for the last couple of weeks. Gardner has been omitted. Unlucky bloke. Scott was the medi-sub. He'll probably be the medi-sub again, possibly. It might be some meantime mail there. And Vandermeer has also been omitted. So I'll throw to you, Hef, as I always ask you. Any changes on the teams that could spell some fantasy goodness for us?
Oh, look, they're pretty like for like there, aren't they? Keith in for Gardner, Waitman in for Vandermeer. I don't see too many structural changes of what we've come to learn the last couple of weeks. I did look at the set of bounces actually just before the show, and it did confirm that once we get to the heat of this time of the year, they went really narrow through the centre bounce rotations. It was the no mucking around crew of the Dogs. They had McRae, they had Bontempelli, then they had Libber. That was their main three. Treloar, Bailey Smith, they just moved them out and they said, these guys will chop them out with Dunkley and that's what we're going to work with. And we know that Melbourne runs that Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney combination as much as they can once we get to these big games. So obviously there's a little bit of chopping now with the likes of Harms and Sparrow, but we're going to see probably the two best midfields, definitely the two best main fours this season go head-to-head, and it's going to be absolutely magnificent. I want to throw one quick one to you to start with, Rudy. There's a lot of talk about, you did mention that the week off suited the Bulldogs, and I have to agree with you there. I thought it was going to be really hard for them against Port, given the travel and the lead up to that game. So I think they're really suited. Are you worried at all about Melbourne coming in with relatively little football under their belt in the last month? Do you think that plays any sort of has any sort of impact coming into this grand final?
Yeah, look, it's good. It's a good question. I think it's a question that's been spoken about a lot in the footy media, and the short answer is no, I don't. These are professional footy teams. They've been planning for this for a month. They would have known, all right, guys, if we smash Geelong, we're going to have to wait a couple of weeks, for the next game because of the whole bye delay thing. So, and I think a lot of Melbourne's success has been down to its fitness management. Darren Burgess, highly sought after fitness guru, who's been spent time Premier League and stuff like that. Like, he's the unsung hero of Melbourne's year, or a couple of years, to be honest. If you look at, I think someone posted a stat on Twitter the other day of number of third and fourth quarters won, and Melbourne's in the top three of most third and fourth quarters won. And that's down to our fitness. So look, you're always probably a little bit scratchy from that first bounce, and the Dogs showed last week how important that first 10 minutes could be. So look, yeah. If we get smashed in that first quarter, everyone's going to be talking about this. It's going to be, Melbourne's only played one game in 30 days, whatever. It's actually I think it's one game in 28 days, but 2 games in 30 days. So there's different ways of looking at it, to be honest. And no, JT, I'm not petrified. I'm as cool as a cucumber. But yeah, so look, I'm not worried. These are professional footy teams. They've been planning for it. It should be okay. But we'll know in the first 10 minutes. I think one thing that Melbourne supporters have come to realise is when we're on and when we're not, and that ferocity around the contest from the get-go. We saw that against Geelong in the prelim, and, texting my mates, we're on here, boys. This is it. We're on. And I think we'll also know if Melbourne's working from the first Bulldogs kick-in. Like, Melbourne have been suffocating teams from kick-ins, So if Caleb Daniels' eyes are darting around, or Bailey Williams, whoever's taking the kick out, and they're looking where to go and they don't know where to go, then we know that Melbourne's on, and that, all these stories about, they haven't played, whether they're actually, legitimate or not.
Yeah, Josh says like Queen's birthday, apparently. Obviously, a mad pies. So.
Smatho, I'm going to jump in with one more question for Rudy before we move on, because I think
yes, sir.
The teams we're going to go through, we know what we're getting from most of these players when it comes to DFS by this time of the year. So knowing sort of which angle you want to take with your lineups is going to be pretty crucial, especially with the big field. Rudy, I'm going to throw this one at you as well. Round 11, Melbourne beat the Dogs pretty comfortably, 87-59, and they seem to, like you say, they strangled the Dogs. The Dogs had a lot of sort of cheap ball chipping it around the back line, and they just couldn't break down the Ds. The Ds were really impressive that night. Last time these two teams played, the Bulldogs got the better of them by 20 points. Is it wrong to say that
the last
maybe
team to beat us, they were?
Exactly. Is it wrong to say that maybe the Bulldogs learnt from that first loss they had to Melbourne, and they sort of learnt more how they're going to deal with the Melbourne pressure, and they obviously dealt with it really well on that night?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Bevo is one of the best coaches in the business. He's a smart, strategic coach. One of the knocks I've had on Gooden in the past is he's a really good development coach, but he's not the best game day coach. So that's a bit of a worry for me. And the tactics that the Dogs used last week against Aaliyah, I think it's pretty clear they're going to try and do a similar thing against May and Lever as well, with Shaki playing that kind of defensive forward role. Look, teams, again, these are professional clubs that have oppo analysis who sit down, they watch hours and hours of footage. So, of course, Bulldogs learnt from that game, and they played really well against us in that was it round 19 game, I think it was.
Spot on. Yep.
So yeah, look, I think that what's really interesting for me is that there seemed to be like all of the talking points have been discussed already. Like I don't usually grand finals, there's something that comes up on the day that's unexpected. I can't really see what's really going to change. Melbourne's defensive structure, of course, that's what they're known for. And then the Bulldogs, really getting the ball out of the middle, and then this possible defensive role on Lever and May. The one thing that did make me laugh, though, I've got to mention this one. Trying to go physical against Max Gawn with Steph Martin and Tim English, like that's just hilarious.
No.
Absolutely hilarious, But I will say this, and this will be important when we get to talk about the teams. Luke Jackson has really been kind of an unsung hero. I know he won the Rising Stars. So that sounds a little bit silly, but when he's gone into the ruck, he's more than often held his own, which has allowed Max to go forward comfortably. So I just think that look, they would have learned a lot of things, but so will Melbourne. So will Melbourne. They've been planning for this. I'm not too worried about that.
All right. Well, let's talk about some fantasy football, though. So, with thanks to our obviously dailyfantasyrankings.com.au, we always reference our free data tools on the stream here. And obviously, every week I talk about the notes that I personally be looking for this particular game. And it really boils down to two key features. It comes down to how the Bulldogs could score against Melbourne, because Melbourne in their last 5 average 116 fantasy points to premium midfielders. But then the Bulldogs only give up an average around 77 compared to these 89. And then obviously the second part is the Rucks. So going up against Melbourne Rucks, it's still a fantasy wasteland with an average of 69 to opposition Rucks, whereas the Bulldog Rucks are the worst in the league, giving up an average of 104 fantasy points in their last 5. So let's get through. I'll bring up the lobby in a second, but I want to get your thoughts, Hef, first in terms of it's a $200,000 pool. You've got over 10,000 entries that possibly in the pot. What are some ways to get yourself probably unique, but give yourself a shot to having a pretty good cash?
Well, yeah, we've banged on about it all season, Smatho. The bigger the size, you have to be unique. You don't have to be unique across all positions. You're obviously you go with your best plays, but you need to have something in there that is going to give you an edge over the opposition. So whether that's a couple of players who are going to be low owned and you're banking on, whether that's taking a different tact with how you build your lineup, whether it's an 8-man dog stack, for example, or an 8-man D stack, and you go really heavy on one side, you've got to be doing something that's not just going to fit in with everyone else. That's my opinion. So fading Max Gawn, who looks the obvious ruck, maybe you want to go really heavy on someone else. If you're playing to win, you got to make a call somewhere. If you're happy to try and get up the leaderboard, you don't play many teams, and you're thinking maybe I'm not going to win, but if I can get reasonably high and get a reasonable return, maybe you don't have to go quite so unique. But yeah, you've got to. It's not just a matter of picking the players who are going to score the most points. You've got to try and get yourself an edge over the field somehow.
Now, Rudy, also you've been playing the minor micro states this year. Also, they're deep pools as well. But for people who want to just say, okay, I might chuck it in a 6-man or possibly some head-to-heads or even the double-ups, you don't have to be that contrarian when you play in those particular contests.
Yeah, the bigger the pool. I think Hef nailed it right there. The bigger the pool, the more unique you need to be, and then the opposite goes for cash games, obviously. By the way, guys, I just realised I needed to do this. As luck would have it, I'm in my study right now, as you can see by the just in case you are unsure that I was a geography teacher, I've got the maps in the background. This happened to be on my bookshelf. Haven't worn it for many a year. Look, in terms of rucks, Max Gawn is going to be the highest scoring ruck on the slate. There's no doubt about that, especially he's gone into beast mode over the last few weeks. I haven't been playing much of Max throughout the year just because until recently, he just hasn't had that same ceiling, but he's rediscovered that ceiling in finals footy. So I think in cash games especially, he's a must play for me. And although I'm concerned about ownership in the bigger pools, I just don't think there's enough upside from these other guys. I mean, Steph Martin, no, he's automatically off for me. If I am going to go unique, I'd go for Jackson, would be my unique ruck. Hope that he scores a few goals, gets us 60 or so, which isn't horrible at 8.5K.
Now, the one that's going to probably stick out at probably lower ownership will be Tim English. We've seen in grand finals that these key forwards can bob up and clunk a mark, and all of a sudden they've got 3 at halftime. Thinking, how good's this? But at 12,130, that's quite a risk when you think, Hef.
It is. He's not going to get a huge amount of ruck time, I don't think. English. I think Martin's going to predominantly even half be trying to tag Max Gawn. An interesting thing from last week for the Ds is that Gawn only attended 59% of the centre bounces, and they used Jackson in 41% of them, which is sort of much higher than they have been through the year. We know that Jackson's been chopping out, but that was a pretty high number, I thought.
But don't forget there, Hef, that the game was done. At halfway through the third quarter. So, I think that's kind of why that stat kind of popped up. And I think, like I said, Jackson's role in the ruck has been understated, definitely.
Yeah, I think that, like you say, he has been that good in the ruck that they're not going to be scared to throw him in there, and especially when English is in there, there's no worries at all playing Jackson in there. If you are playing English, you've just got to be aware that I assume he's going to get petty. Would that be right, Rudy?
Yeah, look, I reckon I was trying to think about the defensive lineups, and I actually got yelled at in a WhatsApp group the other day because I suggested that if there was no bye and May didn't get up, I actually didn't think it would be that too much of a loss. Just because, like, in terms of the Dogs' 12 forwards, without Bruce there, I'm not really concerned about the matchups that much. So, May never really plays a man-on-man role unless there's a big gorilla down there. So, yeah, I think kind of Petty gets in one-on-one, but May and Lever kind of float in front kind of thing.
Float around. Yeah, I think you're right. I do, yeah. It's a hard mob to come up against, but I said you probably want to look at Max Gawn. That is an option to be unique, but 2 games against the Dogs, 118, 119. Obviously has gone absolutely berserk the last few weeks. One of the, even with Steph Martin, a bigger body than when he would have beaten up on English. He still does look the pick Max Gawn, and yeah, there is a chance if you go against Max Gawn, he can sink your lineup. So not telling anyone anything they don't know with Max Gawn there, but
No,
I sort of agree. I think Jackson will actually be somewhat popular as the second option. So English is definitely your contrarian play, I think. And Steph Martin, hasn't he just fallen from grace when it comes to fantasy? 7,500, and everyone's sort of thinking, geez, we can't play Steph Martin there. It's the rucks. You can play anyone, but I'd be going Gawn, Jackson, English, Martin is the order for me.
Quick yes or no.
Look, not to spend too much time on, sorry, Smatho, not to spend too much more time on rucks, but I suppose you could make the argument that Martin has had a couple more weeks to rest, and he might be a little bit better value than the 30s and 40s have been pumping out over the last couple of weeks. But I think, guys, my T-shirt kind of says it all here. It's Maxi for me.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly ask, yes or no, would you consider playing double ruck stacks with a Jackson Gorn combination or English Jackson combination? Nope,
I don't like it.
don't like it. Good man.
No.
All right, I'm going to go with Gorn. I'll say upside ownership. I don't mind. Pray that he gives Martin in English a bath. All right, let's move on to the backs now. Obviously, they're kind of like with the Christian Sale and Card Daniel. You can almost kind of cancel each other out in terms of obviously their role for their team and obviously their fantasy production. One that kind of sticks in the middle between those two and the rest of them is Bailey Dale at 11,750. He's kind of that no man's land where Melbourne doesn't really have that particular player for that side, or not priced on this particular slate. Obviously, the media loves Stephen May. They love Lever. And then you've got your key defenders that sit below that. So I'll start with you, Hef. Is it obviously the top two, Salem and Daniel, are pretty good fantasy players for your defense. But obviously, if you're going Gorn in your ruck and you want to stack your mids, these guys could get overlooked.
Yeah, I think they're going to be on the lower side. The issue with not only do they have to sort of hit their value, these higher defenders, is some of these midfielders we come to. We're going to be paying 13,000 for Christian Salem, but you're going to get Bontempelli around that 13,000 mark as well. So not only do they have to hit their mark, they've got to hit their mark better than sort of these midfielders. So yeah, I think for that reason they're going to be relatively low owned, or a bit lower owned than what they usually be. I think there's a couple of cheaper options here, which grand finals are tough because sometimes these sort of 21st, 22nd guys on the list, they can just not get an absolute sniff in these grand finals. And Rock Smith's a guy I think that's going to be, I think he's going to be, he's not going to be super high owned, but I think he's going to be reasonably popular at that 5,800 mark. And just having a look through, there's a lot of 50s and 60s in his history there. So at that price, it just looks like a really good guy that just bang Rock Smith in your defence, and then you can afford the Gorns. You can get the McRae's, the Bontempellis, and the Trackers with a couple of these cheaper guys. But there is a chance that Smith pumps out a 20 or a 30. So I don't think there's any necessarily cheaper guys without much risk here.
Would you consider him as a defender? Take one of your defender spots then over a midfield spot?
I think I would. I think, especially with those stats that you showed, I think in both games we've seen that the Dogs really do dominate through the middle of the ground. We know the big midfielders are usually high priced for a reason, but we're getting a bit of a discount on them compared to usual. So I would prefer to spend my money in the midfield, but and maybe go cheaper in the backs, because we do have some cheaper back options. We don't have a whole lot of cheaper forward options, which we get to. We get more of that 8,000-9,000 bracket rather than a nice cheap 5 or 6K guy. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
All right, Rudy. Also, talking about your backs for the Ds, obviously Salem is your kind of quarterback role. Does he take most of the kick-ins, or does someone else do that for you?
Stephen May takes a lot of kick-ins. Salem and May, I think stats might prove me wrong on this. I haven't done much research for the show. But yeah, look, in terms of, like, you could basically Control C, Control V for my thoughts on the backline with what Hef just said. Then I think that the ownership on Salem and Daniel, who really are, let's face it, they're the only blokes who can score 100 plus in the backline. They'll be overlooked due to ownership. I think that paying down in the backline is going to be a very, very popular play. I think taking one or two of these cheap defenders, one of the cheap forwards as well, and then stacking the mids. I mean, that's the clear popular play, which, as you know, if you're looking to be unique, then definitely we need to try and mix it up a bit. Rock Smith, yeah, definitely best potential to score an 8 to 9 times value kind of game. The other one that I was considering was actually Easton Wood. Completely contrarian, kind of like off the ball kind of play here, but recent scores in the last kind of 6 games, he's got a couple of 60s and a 50 there. And just going on, something that you guys touched on earlier that I kind of neglected to answer was that, Melbourne do kind of push teams to switch the ball around the back line. So you can get some cheap +6s with the defenders, and also uncontested possessions especially. So I don't mind a double cheap stack of Rourke Smith with Easton Wood. Other players who I think so, kind of Melbourne players, we haven't really had. If you look at the fantasy output of our defenders, it's been pretty terrible this year. Even Stephen May, who in the past has shown a potential to have 8 to 10 mark games, we're just not playing that brand of footy at the moment. We take that ball out of the back line and just pump it straight to the wing. There's no real switch to the close wings and then go down the sides. It's just bomb it outside 50 and then keep the ball moving. So I don't like many Melbourne defenders on this slate, even though I am absolutely in love with my boys Rivers and Bowie. I'm not going to be playing either of them on this slate.
Now, one final play before we move on, which Hef did bring up in the green room, was the Shack attack, old Josh Shackey. Now, 7,500, but he's only defender only. So 70 last time out, 4 tackles, 1 goal, 3, 6 marks there. Grand finals are built on performances where if you clunk a few, as I mentioned, kick a few goals, and all of a sudden you're getting some good leverage on other guys. 7,500, is that the player that you think, yep, I might kick a contrarian here, putting Shack in my defenders?
Yeah, I'm not sure how contrarian he's going to be, but if you're playing especially if you're playing a heavy Bulldogs lineup, Shacky's the type of guy, I expect him to do a roll on a lever, probably a lever I think he'll get the job on. And lever will be trying to get away from him. So obviously you talked about Shacky on a leer. If the Dogs do get hold of the Ds, as much as I'm scared to say that in front of Rudy, Shaggy's the type of guy that I could see sort of getting rewarded in that last quarter when the sting's out of the game and Shacky's up there forward and Bob's up for a couple of goals. It's I won't disagree with Mark there. He's definitely not a guy I want to be all in on.
Well, Perth can turn the lights off and then back on and light off in. So if it needs to be a bit darker for the Shack, you just never know. But
I just think with that role that he's got, that even though it's going to be more of a negating role, it's a type of thing that if the Dogs do get the upper hand and it's all over, it's the type of game where Shacky can sort of fill up. And if Lever doesn't pay him enough attention and he wants to be going over and covering on the likes of Norton and English, and the Dogs are clever enough to try and funnel some ball through Shacky to try and keep him honest, 7,500, it's very possible. You can see with his score there last week against Port Adelaide, very possible for him to score hit value at that price.
All right. I might be a bit more safer and get Easton in. Hopefully they do play that build out of the fence, link up with Dale and link up with little Caleb. So hopefully he can junk it up a little bit. All right, let's move on to mids. And
I'll just jump in one more.
Yes, mate.
I actually don't mind Bailey Dale as a low-owned sort of option there in the back line because I think he does have I think he's got 10x upside there, Bailey Dale.
Sorry, let me go back to him. There he is. He does. And as I said, he's in no man's land.
He is. He's going to be really low-owned because of that price, I think. If you want to go contrarian, I reckon he's a guy that you could sort of build a lineup around him because you know that he's probably going to be low-owned and he actually does have a ceiling, especially if the heat's on and they need to go through him getting it out of the back line.
Would you still pair him with Rock Smith or would you throw him in with another defender?
I think you'd probably throw him in with another defender. Yeah, that's a very good point you make. And
Alex Keith
gosh.
Too.
He does seem a tad underpriced, Alex Keith, as well.
It's not BBL yet, though, so no Alex Keith for me.
And he'll be on Ben Brown too, when you think? First guess.
No, I reckon Cordy with the height on Brown, personally. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to mids. And, we can reference, also the data tools on DFR. We can reference the particular games, the two games this year. And what is glaring to start with is that Melbourne obviously give up points to premium midfielders, and the Dogs had a massive day out last time these teams went. A lot of scores over, 115, 120 plus for the usual suspects. And obviously Draftstars have priced a lot of these guys up for the grand final. Clayton Oliver at 15,810, Jack McRae at 16,580, and Christian Petrarca, which is I'm quite surprised that they've actually priced him as the most expensive player on the slate at 16,730. We'll concentrate on those three first because obviously you want to be, I wouldn't say jamming these guys in, but the way you're trying to save money, you want the ceiling scores out of these guys. So, but also the tool suggests that you want Bulldogs over Melbourne, or am I looking too much into it, Hef?
I think you want to have more Bulldogs than Melbourne. I'm not against Petrarca and Oliver because they're just both so good. Basically, they both had 126 last time the two teams played. Of the three, I want to have McRae, just because I don't think Melbourne really care if McRae racks them up. We saw last time these two teams played, they sent Harms to Liberatore. So I think Melbourne's game plan is to try and cut them off at the contest. And especially that first time when they beat them, they were quite happy to see the Bulldogs chip the ball around without doing too much damage. And if that is their sort of mentality, McRae is obviously as good as anyone in the comp in getting the cheap ball. He had 138 and he had 147 in the two games. So of the three guys there, happy to play all of them, but McRae's my pick.
All right, Rudy, let's talk about obviously the Melbourne midfielders. Clayton Oliver, 15,810. Is this the game that's going to suit him in a contested ball tackling wise, or he just literally be the guy, the clearance kind of guy, and get it out of the midfield straight away for his forwards?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been hearing a lot of, Oliver goes head to head with McRae kind of thing. I mean, Oliver doesn't go head to head with anyone. He just plays his own game, basically. 5 to 7 tackles, handballs galore. But the important part about Oliver's game recently has been the kicking, inside 50 work. I mean, he's still not the best kick in the competition by far, but at least he's not afraid to kick the ball anymore. But, look, in terms of if you're looking to target Melbourne midfielders, Petrarca for me is too expensive. Nearly 17K for what's a ceiling game for Petrarca? He's got to kick 3 or 4 goals, have 30 possessions and 6-7 tackles. Like it's just, I just can't see him getting there. Not to say I don't think he'll obviously, he's an important part to us winning, but I just don't see him getting to that kind of value. Oliver, 16K, similar thing for me. I just think that, like Hef said, like McRae's clearly got the significant, more significant ceiling than either of those two guys. The one thing I might throw up there, I think that this Liberatore contest is going to be a really interesting one. In the first time we played them, he tagged. The second time we played them, we didn't. So whether they just let Viney and Libba go head to head at the bottom of the pack, I reckon they'll actually do that. They won't play Harms on Libba immediately, but they might use that as a plan B. But the clamp down role that I'm suggesting, the crystal balling that I'm doing from Melbourne point of view is actually a defensive role of Andrew Brayshaw on Bailey Smith. I just can't see, like Smith has just been able to do whatever the hell he wants to in the last 2 games they've played. We're not letting him do that. And Brayshaw has played a fantastic defensive wing role. Langdon's the attacking wing, and then Brayshaw is the defensive wing. He's been a really, really important part of our team defense, and I think he plays a shutdown role on Bailey Smith. So he's one that I'll be fading. Other midfield kind of points here, I think in terms of value, I think Langdon is really great value. What is he? Just around 11K. Brayshaw himself, like obviously he's not getting a lot of ball, but if you're playing like that, even kind of can you get me a 70 kind of team, you could make a case of Brayshaw, and then obviously Sparrow as the value midfield pick here. But I'm like you guys, I think it makes sense to load up on Bulldogs midfielders, even if you're going for Melbourne forwards. Don't be afraid. I think I've gotten I'm guilty of this sometimes. I think, all right, well, I've loaded up on Bulldogs midfielders, so I have to have Bulldogs forwards. Don't have to think like that. I think you can definitely go for some cheaper Melbourne forwards. Think that the Bulldogs are going to get more ball. That doesn't mean they're going to win the contests just because they get higher DFS scores. But Treloar is also the one that sticks out as a bit of value for me at just under 12K. Obviously he doesn't play the key mid role that he did when he was a Magpie, but he does have that upside value for me, and Dunkley too, in the same way, playing that half forward role.
Now, Hef, obviously the most important decision you could make here, you got to have a lot of casuals entering the contest. You got to have a lot of seasoned professionals as well. There's Marcus Bontempelli at 13,630. Now, also your brain's saying, "Oh my goodness, that's a great price for Marcus Bontempelli, who's just one vote or a couple of votes off from a Brownlow. Get him in." But do we have grounds for thinking, actually, he's not that great of a fantasy scorer unless he really takes hold of a game? I reckon that's a true reflection of his form and his price, but the name should get him clicks alone.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he's sort of in that same Dangerfield, Zach Merritt. These guys, they always come up big. And like you say, you see Bontempelli at 13, there'd be people locking him in straight away. I think the week off definitely helps Bontempelli. He obviously had that sort of knee issue at the end of the Brisbane game. I think the game style against the Ds really suits Bontempelli, which makes him harder to fade for me. He's had 120 plus in both games. We know that Melbourne like a contested situation, and I think Bontempelli loves that type of game. The games where he doesn't tend to go big, he can sort of take the gas off the pedal when he doesn't need to be involved the whole time. This is a grand final. He needs to be involved, Bontempelli. I see where you're going with it, but, I reckon Bontempelli's set for an absolute monster. And I reckon he might have a little bit of sting in his tail not getting that Brownlow too.
Yes.
I agree with what Rudy said. I can't even remember what I'm agreeing with, but it'll come to me in a sec. Treloar and Dunkley, I think, are both... especially Dunkley got into a lot of centre bounces actually last week, and he does like the contested style of game as well. So that price there is definitely quite nice, I think, for Dunkley. I can't remember what I was going to agree with, but anyway, I might come up with it.
Just all of it.
You did make a very good point.
You're going to agree with all of it.
Absolutely, but you made an especially good point, and I can't remember. So I'll watch that back on replay, I'm sure.
All right, so what I'm doing with my particular team here, I'll probably have to pay down to Tom Sparrow. He is getting CBAs. Look, what he does with them is kind of debatable, but if we can get that 78, that 74, yeah, there's your 10x.
I'll go on record. I reckon Sparrow's going to be around the 40 to 50 mark, and I reckon he's a real teaser because he looks a real obvious play there. But I hate playing these cheaper midfielders against the Dogs because the Dogs just kill them in the midfield. So I think we're going to see Petrarca, Oliver. I think they're going to stand out. I know what he was saying. He was talking about the midfielders and the forwards. So the Bulldogs, They get the ball down. They're +6, +6, +6. The Ds are Clayton Oliver's got a +2. Gawn's got a +1. Petrarca's got a +3. It's in their forward 50. That's the difference in game style. And that's where, even though the Dogs midfields could get the points, that's why Melbourne can still get the ball down there, but they don't get the points on the way through. Good point, Rudy.
Good point. All right, I'm gonna leave Josh Dunkley for the forward line because obviously that's an easier way to get Dunkley in your sides. I might leave those two spots empty for now. So let's move on to the forwards, just depending on my cash situation, because I do really want to play some more Bulldogs players in there. So forwards. All right, so highlighted by Tim English at 12-1, which we kind of said we don't really like. Then you've got also your midfield options, including Lockie Hunter at 12,060. Dunkley's just a little smidge under him at 11,950. And then you've got a large selection of Melbourne players, which I'm not sure already. Their prices have been, I wouldn't say jacked up, but they're not exactly enticing thinking, oh, yeah, Melbourne's going to win this and I'm going to stack them with Melbourne forward because you're paying 11.2 for Neil Bullen and 10,250 for Bailey Fritsch. But these guys could actually lead you to a serious cash if they go off.
Yeah, the hard thing about playing Melbourne single slates recently is picking which of these guys is going to kick the 3 or 4 goals. You know, I mean, far out, you had Max kicking, 5 goals last week, you know. So, you know, they've all been priced up, probably just like $1,000 or so. It just, you know, playing AMB at 11K versus playing him at 10K. I know it's purely psychological, but DFS does that to you. It makes you think silly things sometimes. So for me, you know, how do I see the game going? Well, you know, the clear contrarian play here is Tom McDonald. I don't necessarily want to play T-Mac myself, but, you know, he's been playing some terrible football in the last month, mixed in with some good patches. But what he does, he takes that second key defender away. You know, so the main key defender gets Ben Brown, then the second defender gets Tom McDonald, and then Bailey Fritsch is allowed to do kind of what he wants, which is why he's an attractive play even at 10K. I think Easton Wood probably gets a job on Fritsch, and I just think that he's probably a bit too mobile for old Easton Wood. The other options for me, Charlie Spargo has jumped up for a few good games in the last month, a couple of 80s in the past 4 games, which obviously is the kind of value you need, but he can burn you by just going, you know, he'll have his 5 tackles, but he won't do, you know, anything else. So kind of tough to identify value in the forward line, which is why I kind of like going cheap in the back line. But the one player who, what do you guys reckon about the ownership of Lachlan Hunter?
I think he's awkwardly priced and hard to get in. So I think he's going to be on the lower side, personally.
The only reason I said throw up his name is because we do allow, as in Melbourne, not we, myself, but do allow a lot of uncontested stats, and that is Lockie Hunter's bread and butter. So I think if you're looking for a really low ownership play, especially in the forward line, you go for Lockie Hunter there.
Now, Caden asks, is JJ an option? Last grand final he played, he was the norm. Now, he's down here at 6,000. No, that's Mr. Scott there. Where are we? 6,960. So I'll ask you, Hef. He has potential, but we really need a Bulldogs freight train of a win, don't we?
Probably. You know what I like doing with these forwards sometimes is this is my spot where I tend to just go unique, and a guy like Jason Johannisen, and people start shaking their heads and, JJ's been gone for 3 years, that sort of stuff. I don't mind just building a lineup I like, and then I've got about 18,000, 17,000, and just even use your old autofill button up the top there, Smatho. Leave a couple of spots open, and there's my randomised. I've got a couple of forwards. In reality, JJ is like if you're putting in a single entry lineup or you're playing head-to-heads, you're not really relying on him. But you go back through his form, he's probably got 3 or 4 games through the season where he just sort of bobs up and the ball just lobs his way. So he's not a guy that I'm sort of hanging out to play by any means, but that's the type of play that if you like the rest of your team and then you've got JJ and you're just hoping for a miracle. You like the rest of the team and you're hoping for we sort of mentioned Spargo last time we did the show, and he bobbed up for an 86, which was his highest score for the year. I just think the forwards, I like Dunkley as my top forward, but I think there's a lot of these guys that are so sort of hit and miss. If you want to try and go a bit unique, go pick a couple of guys that you wouldn't usually play, and there's your point of difference.
Now, obviously, the last couple of options here they haven't really touched on is your real key forwards here. Ben Brown at 9,460. Obviously, there's consistency in his scoring there. Nothing under. Look, there's a 41 back in May. Obviously, he was dropped from the side. But since July onwards, there's nothing under 54 there. And at 9,460, it's not a fantastic price. But again, you could probably grab him at low ownership. Pickett could be made for the big stage in Western Australia. Obviously, a bit of nighttime. Pickett doesn't go astray. And then we got Aaron Norton at 9,130, which he's going to be relied on as the barometer. You know, if we talk about Matheson for the Lions, this is the barometer for the Dogs. If Aaron Norton is taking speggies or just crashing packs, chunk and marks. That's not a bad form line in terms of fantasy-wise in his last 3 games there, Rudy.
Yeah, look, I had Aaron Norton in one of my season-long teams. And he was an absolute superstar at the beginning of the year and then kind of faded late, but has done pretty well now that the responsibility is pretty much squarely on his shoulders. I kind of like the fact, let's assume a couple of things. Let's assume that Tim English stays forward for, 80% of the game. So clearly, I mean, he's a big lad, so we're going to be worried about him, right? Then let's say because of that worry about English, that then allows Norton to a bit more freedom. Then he becomes a great play at that price point. Do we have any revenge game narrative with Mitch Hannon?
Oh, that's not bad. That's not a bad little hot take there at 8,480. I bet. I mean, how good is the bloke? He obviously moved clubs and I'll just play grand final for my new club, but my old club's playing 1 and 2. It's the old happy and sad at the same time. Really good for them, good for me.
But if you look at his box scores, I mean, it's not too far away from value there for the last month or so, apart from that one bad game a couple of weeks ago.
Now, also,
he does benefit that he's not going to be the focus too, Hannon. He's another guy that would be in my bunch of autofills for my forwards.
and look, the one thing that Melbourne does kind of lack is a real true lockdown small defender. We've got Bowie and Rivers as our kind of running defenders, but in Salem's probably never played man-on-man in his entire life. Does Mitch Hannon or Waitman kind of grab hold of the game, but at least chip in for a couple of goals, 3 goals, 5 marks, 4 tackles, and there's value for you, for those 2 guys.
He's definitely a guy that has to be in your mix, Waitman. Just
do we believe the hype?
Well, I'm not.
Hype?
I don't think he's a must by any stretch, but I just think that he's the guy. He could, if he pumps a 70, Waitman, if he gets on the end of a few, then he could be your guy that wins you the slate.
Oh, if he gets 70, Bulldogs win. Simple as that.
And when you're picking these forwards, you probably if you're picking Hunter, you want to build your lineup around more of a narrative of, okay, maybe Melbourne's going to give up a lot of outside ball in this game, and if you're going to play Waitman, then maybe you want to go with the Dogs dominating through the midfield, that sort of thing. I think the forwards is always the trickiest position for me, and I think it's really where you want to be making sure they make sense with the rest of your lineup.
Now, I'll see Josh has suggested that I make a Dogs 8-1 stack. And all I'm hearing is, let's play Hunter and Dunkley and team them up with Waitman or JJ. So I can see, like, as a casual player, and I can probably lob myself as a casual player, I'm thinking, okay, let's just jam most midfielders that I can. And what I can do is maybe someone really cheap as my last midfielder. So I can go, Hunter and Dunkley, possibly get in Tommy Sparrow, and then that doesn't leave me much like that. So I have to make a decision where if I have to go Hunter and Dunkley, who do I have?
Yeah, you got to pick one, don't you?
What do you reckon, Rudy?
Well, everyone goes Dunkley, so I go Hunter then.
All right, so out comes Josh. So therefore, let me get in Tommy Sparrow, because obviously he looks like a pretty essential play there. Therefore, I can get a Langdon and a Brayshaw, and then probably a cheaper forward there. So what do you reckon, Hef? A Langdon into Brayshaw, possibly
I prefer Langdon over Brayshaw, if that's the angle you're going to go.
Yep, that leaves me 9,670. So there you go. Brown, Pickett, McDonald, Norton.
I would probably go McDonald.
Yeah, if we're building a single entry team into the main comp, then T-Mac and Hunter, that's a 15 or 18% ownership on both those guys. So that's a good way to play it.
All right, excellent work, gents. So let me just remove the lobby there. So final thoughts on the grand final. I know we've got a lot through game theory, a lot of scenarios. So let me just say, okay, we've done the fantasy. The final siren rings out. Hopefully, Rudy, for your sake, you're jumping up and down and whatever in your backyard because you can't actually go anywhere. Probably like 10Ks, I probably can run around the streets. But give me your predictions in terms of margin and also your Norm, Smith, Smokey for the guys who have like a bit of a punt on grand final day.
Yeah, I do like the way you got a lockdown jab in there, Smatho. Jab, pun intended. So, yeah, for me, look, I'm nervous as all hell. Funny story, I was watching the prelim and I had I was sitting down the couch and I got a beep on my phone, on my watch. I got a heart rate alert. Because my watch had sensed that my heart rate was high, but I hadn't been active in the last 10 minutes. So I'm not gonna cope well on Saturday.
Does that thing ring 000 for you and you start talking to your emergency from your watch?
Something like that. But look, I think look, and I don't want to. This people who know me will know that I'm rarely positive when it comes to my team. But I really do think there's something different about the boys this year. I think we get it done. I don't think it's going to be a big win, but I think we do get it done. In terms of punting, I loved, for those who haven't read it, JT had a great blog the other day about Norm Smith fancies. Really, really clever article, that one. He must have had a ghostwriter. It was so good. It's a really great article. He played the maths, but I'm going to ignore him and go with Angus Brayshaw as at $81 for Norm Smith.
I love it. All
Let's
right,
not forget he did come third in the Brownlow not so long ago.
He did. He wasn't even invited.
City guys gone for Norm Smith, which is obviously he's stealing my thunder there. But anyway, Hef, who you like, mate?
I'm actually going to go with the Bulldogs. I think after that last win they had against the D's and the games, they've been winning games. I didn't think they'd get this far. And we've seen them do this before. They came from nowhere to win that flag before. And I just think they're going to be, they're a little bit stronger through the midfield than the D's. And definitely the prices, I would go with the Dogs. I think the game's a bit closer. I think the 8.5 was the price we saw on the Dogs with the start. I think that's a little bit too long. And I'm going to go with Bontempelli for Norm Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, Hef. Look, I'm actually going to go with Melbourne because I can just see that where is the Bulldogs' plan B if Norton nor English get on a few and then all of a sudden they're 3 goals, 6 at halftime. Like, where do they turn it around? Because obviously they can get on top in the midfield. They can obviously control through half-back, through half-forward. But if they can't convert it into scores, I'm not sure where plan B is. And if Melbourne obviously get a start on them, then, that could be a long day for the Doggies. So, the D's for me. And, Max gone for the Norm Smith because, as you said, Rudy, they tend to just look at guys who've gone well this year, had an influence on the game, and it all sets up for Gawn to have one of those games that he becomes that kind of Jim Stimes legendary figure. He's taken over, etc. So for me, the D's into Max Gawn, which will obviously pays out not that much. All right, let's wrap it up here. Rudy, I'd like to say thank you very much for jumping on for our special guest. Obviously, that's some great, insightful, some fantasy knowledge there, which obviously you've been saving it up for the past 9 months since you started to pull the pin in retirement. So thank you very much for joining us on the DFS show, and good luck for your D's on Saturday. And also a massive shout out to you, Hef, for joining me every week on the DFS Down Under show, week after week. Your insightful comments has also led to hopefully our viewers winning some money on Draftstars. And if they don't, I'm sure they've been having fun throughout the season. And obviously your cameo on the live final was obviously one of the highlights for me as well, mate.
What a mess. Thanks, Rudy. Good luck, mate. All the best.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it. Well done to you two for the job you've done this year. Smatho, the face of DFS in Australia. Amazing. And Hef, the whitest teeth in DFS in Australia as well. So thank you to you too.
Smatho, just get JT's latest comment up.
Oh, can I? All right, I'll bring it up. This is an hour.
In typical fashion. Thanks to all the viewers.
Thanks to all the viewers. It's been fantastic for having for this year. So good luck. hopefully we're doing a massive shout out to one of our viewers for the weekend. So thank you very much. Let me get this comment off the screen. There we go. Thanks, Rudy. Thanks, Hef. Good luck for Saturday.
Thanks, Smatho.